This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results.
It's no different than being a professional baseball player. You can't be a one-trick pony. You have to be a 5-tool player in order to succeed in this game.
This is the Power Producers Podcast, production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey everybody, we are here with the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Kyle and I welcome Mr. Cameron Pechia to the show today. I hope I pronounced that right.
No, it was like every teacher in my childhood said that, but I know
Pechia,
you're a bill collector, attorney. You want something from me. It's Pechia. There's no way you'd Pechia.
Yeah.
No kidding, man. Well, you weren't even in. They didn't announce you right when you won your award in innovation then.
I know.
That's the pronunciation I went with. And usually I'll ask. I was pretty confident in that.
I love it.
Wow. Well, Cameron, welcome to the show, man. You know, we are pretty informal here. We like to hear about things that are going on at different agencies all over the country. And so why don't you tell everybody kind of who you are, where you came from, how you got to where you're at, and what you're doing now, and then we'll start drilling you with questions.
Yeah, man, for sure. I appreciate you having me on here. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Dave. So I started in insurance back in 2007, and actually there's a funny story. I think, Dave, you'll find the humor in this. Prior to that, just a little bit of context leading up into it. I got into insurance when I was 20, turned 21 when I was officially licensed and hit the ground running in the commercial insurance game. Before that, though, me and a best friend bought a lot of vending machines. And so we put out these vending machines and knocked on doors and visited mechanic shops and insurance agencies and office buildings, things like that. And so some form of residual income. And at the time, you know, we were nickel and diming it, going to refill these things, emptying out change. And it was horrible. But it was a great experience and a great eye opener for us in like developing this game plan and seeing like what inspired us. We read this thing. Somebody in Florida had this whole vending machine route. He sold it, I think, for $150,000. And at the time, we're like,
I've heard of people banking with vending machines.
Listen, I had one of the best vending machine ideas in the history of man, and I couldn't get it across the finish line. And it's while I was in insurance, we had a client at the agency I was at before I launched Florida Risk that did they were a property management supply house, and this is a well over $100 million a year in sales company now. But basically, if you ran an apartment complex and you needed anything at all, light switches, switch covers, AC units, it really didn't matter what it was. They would take your order, load their truck, and they would make drop shipments to all of these apartment complexes every week, or sometimes twice a week, depending on how big they were. My philosophy was, based on the demographic of the people that I saw getting red box videos outside of Walgreens and CVS and all of that, if I could figure out a way to get red box machines and refurbish them, or come up with something similar and place it at each one of these apartment complexes these guys were already servicing throughout the Southeast, I could have them go and collect the money, split the money with them off the top for opening the door and putting the vending machine there, and basically just sit back and count the money. Like that was foolproof to me. I couldn't get anybody else to buy in. So that's why
it's a good idea.
Hey, dude, like I've had so many $1 million ideas that I just can't execute on by myself. It's crazy. But that was one of them for sure. I know that would have taken off.
I love it. And then that led us into my best friend, and we actually got into insurance together. His name's Casey. He's still in insurance, but now on the brokerage side. He's a underwriter for brokerage market, MGA. His cousin owned an agency, looping in a little bit of humor for you. They were based out of Southern California down in Carlsbad. So we got to chatting with her. We said, hey, let us open a branch and an office for you up in Washington State. We'll knock it out of the park. The name of their agency, I'll just blast it out, was Work Comp for Less. All now, right. We're in Washington. What does that mean, David?
Yeah, you're monopolistic. There's no work comp for less there.
So we came into the insurance game trying to sell work comp to contractors in Washington. That's what we came into. So after a very, very short duration of that, we realized, okay, P&C is the only play, GL, bonds, commercial auto in the marine, builder's risk, that whole deal. And so we ended up DBAing off of that, and we just shortened it WCFL, insurance services. And then we opened up, and that was basically our intro into insurance. And thinking, we didn't know anything. My buddy kind of laid the groundwork for identifying, the list through Department of Labor and Industries, figuring out how we were going to gain our contacts. First 2 years of my insurance career were searching lists through the Department of L&I, sorting counties, clicking into each one, creating an X-State database, essentially, sorting the database, going back through and cold calling. That was 2 years of my life. Straight cold call.
You just told my life story. Like, right? Seriously, that I think I did pretty much the exact same thing.
Yeah. And so, I am very grateful for it. And this time frame was 2007. 2007 was a terrible time, obviously, for contractors. Big places were going out of business. Everything was crashing. The market was terrible. We came in with a couple companies that were new to the scene in the construction industry. I don't even want to blast them out because the product, I wouldn't touch it now with anything, a 10-foot pole. It just wasn't great. But anyways, so going into the scene with that, we ended up just cold calling strictly based on price. I mean, that was our whole pitch. Hey, let us bid your insurance on the upcoming renewal. We've got a new product, an exclusive market. We're killing it with our existing clients here and moving them over and having a ton of success. Just give us a shot. And that was basically it. And we just hit the phones, hammered it. So my first 2 weeks, I'm 20, 21 at the time, I land my first account, and it was pretty much pivotal to my insurance career. I think is the reason I'm still here. I ended up making, I don't know, it was like $2,000 at the time, something like that. But at the time, as a 21-year-old, prior to that, I, worked construction. I worked in a metal foundry, grinding metal. I've worked in kitchens, you name it. And I had never made anything close or remotely close to that kind of money with relative ease. I would say it wasn't easy, but, basically you call, build rapport, fill out some paperwork, you deliver the proposal, and then you make money. To me, I was like, this is the greatest day of my life.
Yeah.
So here I am.
$2,000. I mean, my God. That was 10 months worth of rent when I was in college, including utilities.
Exactly. So that was kind of my intro into insurance. And obviously we've come a long way, and it was probably the hardest thing. I don't know how many people you could put in that position and go through the adversity, the rejection, the grinding, the just on the phones for 2 years, and how many would succeed. But I mean, the ones that do obviously become successful, and they're the ones that are friends with us now. So
you got in pretty young. It's like the complete opposite of every single person that we talk to, like in terms of getting into the insurance industry. Then it's pretty
except for
interesting.
Jennifer got in right out of high school.
That's true.
Yeah,
okay.
She did. Yeah, she's awesome. So I saw she's dropping too. That's cool. I started at the time, I really didn't understand the magic sauce and the residual income and like what this opportunity really meant, and the career and the freedom and flexibility and all that, until you keep in mind I was early 20s. So yeah, I'm glad I made it through that. I really am, because it could have gone either way. And
dude, you're popping bottles after that. after that $2,000 check.
Big screen TV.
You're like you're an R. Kelly video in real life.
So, but then after a couple years into it, the residual kicked in, and then it was like, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then it just grew, it compounded, grew. And then my buddy ended up leaving. He went a different route. So I was by myself. I ended up moving out of the office we were at into the house. So I worked out of my house for a pretty good duration. I want to say a year, if not maybe more at the time. So I'd pretty much get up, morning routine. I would like to say I was more motivated than I was, but I was making good money at the time as an early 20-year-old and, going out and doing some other stuff. But I always was great at networking, building relationships, not afraid to walk in anywhere, which ended up serving me well in going out, because then I just developed contacts and referral partners and that whole bit. And then I ended up playing, I don't know, do you know Molly Smith by chance?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so she's another person I owe credit to. So pretty much in order of who I owe credit to is my wife, who stood by me the entire time, supported me financially during the early years as well, because starting out commission only, which I made $2,000 that first sale, but then it ebbed and flowed throughout. So she was there. My buddy Casey, the owner of WCFL, for giving me the opportunity, and then Molly Smith, who she's now in Safeco on the corporate side. I was playing a softball tournament with her husband. We were out on a weekend deal tournament, having a few beverages and stuff like that. We got to chatting and he asked what I did. I told him. He then the next week got me in touch with his wife, who was one of the partners at the agency I'm at and now currently a partner of. So we went at lunch. I'm not one to turn down a lunch meeting, obviously, for opportunity and stuff at the time. And she pretty much offered me a job essentially on the spot. I bought myself a couple of days to kind of work out the details, negotiate it, and came in, and then hired on underneath her as a producer / account manager. Now this opened my eyes to the personal lines realm. So now I was pretty much responsible for managing a personal lines book, production, sales, and a bunch of other things. So it gave me a little bit more ground level into how an agency actually operates, what it takes to manage a book of business, to still grow and do everything that I was used to doing, which took me away and out of the commercial sales for a little bit, or primary focus anyway, which I think was good in the overall grand scheme of things. My heart lies in commercial. That's where I get excited. That's what drives me to get up in the morning and kind of keep pushing, is the commercial grind. But it opened my eyes to what the personal lines was. And I mean, we've got a decent sized personal lines book as an agency. It's very stable. It's very profitable. And it allows us a lot of opportunity with staffing and marketing cost and everything else to really focus on the different niche divisions that we got. And so I'm very grateful for her. She ended up moving to corporate, and I basically took over for her as a partner. We retired out a couple other partners in the firm, and here we are. So
cool deal, man. You've hit on all aspects, really, for the most part. I think the only thing I didn't hear you talk about is life and health.
Yep. I've got a life and health license. We have life and health folks in the agency. I did health insurance for a bit. Washington was kind of one of the leaders when they went to the exchange health model for individual anyway. And so I ended up getting certified for that. I spent some time there helping folks. It kind of felt like I was spinning wheels and doing charity work, though. At the end of the day, it was a grind. They started cutting commissions. Some health carriers didn't pay commissions. Then they started going to a flat rate per member in the household. I jumped out of that. I spent a little time doing some group health, but quickly realized if you're going to be a major player there, if you don't focus on it, I just partner with Gallagher's of the world and the big dogs of the world and just kind of kick them that and basically partner up on that relationship, just because it's not an area of expertise I've got and I don't have a team to back it up. So
you mentioned a few niche markets and verticals that you guys have going on that you focus on. What are they?
So my background was construction. That's what I started in. That's what I got my intro to the insurance world with. And so that's kind of like the comfort zone, bread and butter kind of nostalgia type deal. And I got a lot of expertise in did pretty well there. We got a decent sized book of business and contractors there. But since then, we've done some restaurants and bars. I'm glad that wasn't huge during this recent, obviously, COVID outbreak. I think that would have been a nightmare for resource stuff. But my background, actually, I did go to school for a short duration. I thought I went to culinary school. I actually thought I wanted to be a chef and cook for a living when I was trying to figure out early on what I wanted to do with my life. And so
early on when he was 12.
When I was 12,
got insurance when he was 25.
Okay.
There's not much buffer there.
So that window there, that short duration. And so I actually had some exposure into from, dishwashing to cooking, to running a kitchen, to management, to bartending, to being exposed to that. And then my wife, her in-laws actually owned a restaurant. So I was privy to basically the inside operations, ground up, how that works. So at the time, plus I've got a good friend of mine who, well, like everybody, I mean, you can buy database anywhere, but they've got a really good program in database for restaurants and liquor establishments and anything with a liquor license. So I had all this at my disposal. And so that was a little bit of a vertical, but then it pivoted drastically a few years back. I ended up purchasing, and we had done it along the way. And I actually, when I did construction, I had got into the transportation niche a little bit in my early years and have done it off and on throughout my entire career. I bought a commercial book of business and it was all transportation. It was all commercial auto. So over the road, heavy haul. So that has been a major, major focus. I've got a team that's all we do is trucking, transportation. It has its own website, its own DBA, its own marketing, its own everything. And so that's what drives most of the focus right now.
So two things that I heard you say that I think everybody needs to pick up on. The first one is, if you're going to be successful in benefits, you really need to be all in to be successful on benefits. I think that it's crucial for anybody that's out in middle market commercial to have a working knowledge of how benefits works, because especially not as much for you because you're not dealing with workers' comp like we are, but for anybody that's in a state that's not monopolistic, having a working knowledge of benefits is a natural pivot if somebody's having bad comp performance. It's a proven fact. I mean, there's a direct correlation. So even going back to the early days of my career, when I would go in to call on somebody, if it looked like they were going to have a high mod or whatever else, I would immediately go to Free ERISA and figure out who their benefits were with and who how much they were paying in commissions for that. It would give me an idea at least of who the broker was, how they operate, because I knew who all these people were. But, we had the ability to just flip that internally to a benefits person in-house. It made all the sense. I got to share in a little bit of the revenue and for a year or two, and it was easy way for me to have another tentacle, wrapped around an account. And, I would lead and I would go in. There would be times where I'd end up taking the AOR on the benefits before the PNC and grow that relationship. There was always a natural pivot there. So when we started Florida Risk, I had to make the decision. Am I going to try and invest and have the whole back end operation for benefits too, or not? And the answer was absolutely not. I want nothing to do with it. And we basically did a really simple joint venture with a buddy of mine that does have those capabilities and does have the technology. So it's a really simple deal. We've got a place that does not compete against us for the PNC, but can handle the benefits. And he refers all his PNC our way. So it's very, very simple. If I refer benefits to him, his agency automatically keeps 50% of the revenue on the account so that they have enough money to fund the servicing and everything. The other 50% goes into a jointly held checking account. Same thing on the PNC. At the end of the month, we split the balance of the checking account 50-50. Very, very simple to deal with. So it nets out to 25%, referral revenue or whatever else. The other thing that I heard though was that you have some background or some direct experience in some of these. I think that if you're going to be successful in commercial insurance, you have to get ingrained into the businesses that you're working with. I've done everything from working on a restaurant line to refinishing the inside of pools to pouring driveways and decks, all under the guise of learning how these companies operate so that I knew what I was doing. Dude, if you show up to a job site in a pair of work boots and you're not afraid to get dirty, you've got that account right out of the box, right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that's the story. That's the story of my life in insurance. I was plumbing, tiling, and doing the forming for decks for swimming pools while I was in school getting my license for insurance. And when I came out, I just went back and wrote all the subcontractors I made friends with on the construction sites that I was on while I was getting the insurance license.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your credit there, the niches are going to align with where my expertise lies anyway. So I did construction. I did drywall in high school. My uncle was a general. I worked for him odd jobs before I could legally work, right, as a hand, labor hand or whatever. And then my family, I've got quite a few family members that are long haul truckers over the road. They went here to Florida, and the weekends, the truck's there, it's in the shop, where we spent time out in the shop working on those, knowing those inside and out.
I would never want to drive from Florida to Washington State. That sounds especially not in a truck.
Dude, I hate driving from Tampa to Pensacola. I mean, I feel like Washington State would be right around the corner by the time you get to Pensacola.
Yeah, the messed up thing, think about flying. So when I had to come down, and the first time I met you, David, was down at Jason Castile. I flew from Spokane. I had to go to Seattle the opposite way to come back to you guys. So it's a brutal, no matter how you look at it. So
are they having any connecting flights from the nation of Chaz yet?
Right. I know. I'm waiting for the airstrip to go in and armed Somalian guards or something to be there to just kind of escort you around. I mean, it's kind of crazy what's going on there, man. It's pretty wild.
I try and stay out of the news and politics as much as I can. I have zero control over it.
Seriously,
it rents way too much space in my head. It is not profitable, quite honestly. I want to know where the money is.
And it's depressing. I had CNN and all these notifications for early on, a few years back, and then I made the choice to just eliminate all those because it just put me in a negative mindset, waking up and looking at these things that popped up.
None of it's good.
It was like, man, this is very depressing.
Yep.
No, you know what? Here it is. Here's my next $1 million idea. I am going to create an app that will populate everybody's phone with cute puppy pictures first thing every morning via push.
There you go.
Perfect. Implement's the key.
Yeah, you can take it and run with it.
I wanted to go back for a second, David, when you're talking about pivoting from the comp to the benefits being a natural conversation. And I mean, I think I know what you're talking about in terms of companies having shitty benefits and their, workers' comp claims going up because of that. Is that where you were going with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I look at. When we go in and we start looking at loss runs on accounts, I, slice them and dice them about 15 different ways. I don't ever really get into, and thank you for asking the question, because I don't get into the nitty gritty of what we do an awful lot. I keep it surface level. But one of the things that I really like to do when I'm analyzing data like that is I want to see, you're looking for lag time, number one, lag time on claims. How long from when did the accident occur? How long did it take to actually get that thing reported? But I also like to plot the day of the week. They don't tell you that on loss runs. You have to go back and physically look on the calendar. But if I see
Monday.
A pattern, if I see a pattern, I want to go back and see how many of these reported on a Monday, how many were reported on a Friday, like maybe somebody wanted a long weekend, whatever. But, Aflac actually had done some pretty robust studies on loss ratios and how loss ratios dropped. And I want to say the statistic was 65% lower if you had a good short-term disability and long-term disability strategy in place for your team. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because, I had an accounting professor in college. One of the three that I had, it did take me 3 times to pass accounting. We'll get into that. Listen, I blame my advisor for the first one. Who in the heck schedules a freshman that grew up in a conservative Baptist home to go to accounting at 8:00 on Thursday when he clearly knew drink and drown was Wednesday night?
Right.
Clearly.
No, I had no excuse. Mine was in the afternoon, something like 2:00.
That would have still applied. That would have still applied for me. So.
Probably.
But anyhow, you look at it and these guys that get hurt over the weekend, my accounting professor said everybody sits on the fence, right? Everybody has a price. If you haven't been bought yet, nobody has offered you your price. But at some point, you will cave. No matter what it is, there's a dollar figure that you will cave to, regardless. And we could all sit here right now and say, no, never would cave on anything. There's certain things I wouldn't do. Like, I'll give you a hint. I wouldn't let that guy Rakifi or whatever his name is in the WWF give me the stink face for any dollar amount period. You would have to show serious dollars, and I'm promising you that these guys that are in the WWE right now that allow that.
So what's your price? Let's just get this all out there. What like for the stink face? What is
it's going to be way above what they're paying other people to do it right now. So I would never be at risk of being hired for it.
That or going in a body bag with a snake. I mean, I'm not about that life either.
Much lower price point for the snake bag. Actually, I would do that for less money. But it's crazy. He said everybody has a price, and I think that holds true inside of the workers' comp world, because these people will file claims for stuff that did not happen at work. But if you have the short-term policy in place, they're going to be more apt to take that claim, and instead of trying to file it on comp, they'll file it on Aflac or Colonial or Lincoln Financial, whoever they have, because they're going to have their money so much faster than what they would going through the whole comp issue. I mean, nobody's questioning whether or not people get hurt. It's just they're lying about the fact they got hurt at work.
Right.
So that's where I was headed.
You bring up a good point there because, well, in any commercial sense, really, for insurance, you need to know the business kind of ground up, inside and out, what their employees' mindset is, what they face on a day-to-day to basically properly advise them. And do they have a culture of safety? Do they have a bring them back to work program? Or really in those, I don't have a ton of work comp expertise, obviously, coming from a work comp agency. But we did have some programs that were supplemental to work comp that we had worked with and implemented in with. Is basically the first question is do you want to bring that employee back? Because that determines what route you take on the back to work program, on what you want them doing. So they're and all this stuff. So.
Well, it's funny, too, because we'll start out a lot of meetings and we'll ask that question. And it's like, I don't have any room for them here. And then when you show them the financial implications of not bringing them back, all of a sudden they want to bring them back.
Yeah. Well, I guess they could file some stuff for me and answer the phones. And
they can hold a sign on the street for you. I don't care what they do.
Hey, the street sign holding game has really been elevated over the years. I think
my brother did that for like a summer, and would just bang heaters out. Like we would get like $15 an hour, work for like 3 hours, and just be sweating his ass off and just rip through a whole pack of Marlboros. Awesome.
There was a guy that was on the corner. I really probably shouldn't even talk about this, but I'm going to anyhow.
We're already there.
There was a guy on the corner at Causeway and Providence that was advertising for. He was advertising for the natural food store or whatever. And he was wearing one of those full body spandex suits that covers your face and you put the sunglasses on it. There is a 100% chance this guy went to Hickory Farms and stuffed a beef log down the side of his leg while he was out there. And I told, and my of all people, my son is like, oh my God, look at that. And so then now the whole car looks over. And so he says, Dad, what do you think about that? I said, I think if I'm packing like that, I'm going to go ahead and show my face. I mean, at this point, I want to own that. I want everybody to know who's behind that. But whatever.
I would own it. I mean, you got to advertise. I have a story about that as well. So I've got a good friend, family friend, growing up who owned a chain of sandwich shops, and so he hired my little brother, teenager, to stand out in a dog costume with a sign trying to drive traffic in. So I'm with my mom, my other siblings were driving in her truck. We look over and there's my brother on the side of this highway doing the
why the dog costume? Are they feeding dog meat sandwiches or
it was like a firehouse substance.
Okay.
So
got it.
The theme with the dog and the firehouse deal. So he sees us, he's doing his deal, waving. And then right when we get up to him, we see the wave, the middle finger wave to us. And so he ended up, I think he got fired for that, but it was funny awesome. Now looking back.
Listen, if I'm wearing a dog costume on the side of the road, there is so much material there. There's a 100% chance I'm not coming back after my first day. There's no way. No. But I will be a social media maven. I can promise you I will show up on people's stories all over the place if I'm the dog.
This is pre-social media. This was forever ago, but it was hilarious. So.
I'm so happy I grew up like in the pre-social media era.
Yeah.
I would be in so much trouble.
Oh, me too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, even if you were to resurrect my MySpace account, I would be in big trouble.
I actually tried to find mine so I could turn it off. Like I could just
how do you delete this?
I found it, but I can't remember my password. So
got to hit up your boy Tom.
Yeah, whatever. Well, listen, so one of the things that I admire about Cameron is that he is going to go get what he wants, right? So why don't you tell everybody, because I think this is a really valuable story for agents that are out there. You know, none of us want to take no for an answer. Some people just give up when they hear no and they immediately, quit and move on to the next thing. Maybe the same with maybe, but talk to them about how you got your Great West contract, because I think that's a great story that a lot of agents could learn from in terms of what you did. And I'll tell you that I did something similar to that with Travelers in a prior life, but I'm interested in you sharing that story because I think it's a good one.
So, I think it kind of goes back to, I heard you mention it on a prior podcast, I believe, don't dabble in something that you don't belong in. Now,
I will say that 100% of the time about trucking. You do not dabble in trucking. You either do it or you don't.
And you understand it. You understand the contracts. You understand what they face. You understand broker contracts to them. You understand up-to-date litigation. I mean, it's crazy the amount of knowledge that goes into it. But then you get an agent that has, let's say, well, I'm not going to even say it, but has a general appointment where they could write home and auto and this other stuff. But then on the other side, they can write a trucker, right? And anyone then now, it's like, oh, I like trucking. I could write trucker all day.
They see the premium, right? They see the premium and they think it's something that's attractive.
So, and I think that you can't, a couple things there is when you're developing a niche or deciding where you want to go or kind of focus on in what area, you can't be driven by money, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're working to make a paycheck and we're in a very lucrative career and a career path that sets up a lot of people, but you have to be passionate about the industry you're going in somewhat, have a deep dive knowledge into it and have a complete understanding. So that way you can put yourself in their shoes, genuinely care about the prospect, give proper advice and basically help them. I mean, like we don't talk about the cost of insurance. We talk about the total cost of insurance, but we don't talk about the price. We don't quote unless we have everything up front. We go through an IDP, a disqualification with the client, make sure they're a good fit for us, make sure that they do that when we're in the quoting phase. But to get to your question, so we had always had a transportation in the agency, and I had dealt with it from an early age of 21, 22. And so I had some exposure there. So I had some bumps along the way. Agency billing, I knew nothing about it. 21, 22.
Agency billing is the worst. Still, today at 46, almost 47, I despise agency billing.
It's brutal. And then the service aspect along with so I went into the two industries, construction, well, three, but construction and trucking. And people always want to go after what's lucrative and what can they do to kind of set autopilot and not be involved with. Those two are not the things to do. They're service heavy, they're certificate heavy, they're regulation heavy, they're compliance heavy. There's a bunch of things. So we purchased the trucking book, I want to say 3-4 years ago now. And I decided at that time, I said, if we're going to do this, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it better than anybody. I'm going to make sure we're trained. We're going to have the most amount of knowledge about the product, about the consumer, about our ideal client. We identified who our target was. We know exactly what we're going into. You mentioned too on a prior podcast that you've got trucking, you've got over the road, you got all these different segments and there's sub niches within. So we have a vast target there, but it's very defined within that. So we don't stray too far out of it. We don't get into your high risk, your people, your chameleon carriers, your unsafe drivers, that kind of stuff. We know.
Dude, what is a chameleon carrier?
Chameleon carrier. So back in the day, before the amount of technology that we've got, especially with safer reports, cab reports, the reports that the carriers have access to, an insurance company would basically build a DOT. They'd run a company, they'd run it into the ground, their out of service would go through the roof, they've had bad claims history, they'd have bad scores. They would basically drive that name and that company into the ground. All they would do then is transfer it to their girlfriend or wife or cousin or whoever. They would open a company. All of a sudden, all these trucks and drivers move here, and now they're a chameleon carrier. They're the same company operating as a different entity to try to deceive two things, DOT and also the insurance company. So it doesn't fly now, though. I mean, there's too much data, too much available reports. I can see VIN numbers, associated companies the VINs have been with. I could see everything. They can't really lie to you or deceive you. So
with all that information, what do you guys use to keep track of everything? And I mean, I would imagine you have a CRM, right?
Yeah. So we use a few different components there. So we have Hawksoft as our
agency management system.
Management system. We've got Agency Revolution, which acts as kind of the automation trigger for some of the CRM for the follow-up and campaigns, drip campaigns, lead nurturing campaigns. And then I actually use, this is an area that's on my major to-do list and rebuild is the CRM, looking at HubSpot and a couple of those. But I use MeisterTask. I'm able to automate flow into MeisterTask, automate it from the marketing campaigns that drops into a platform where all my producers get access to it. And then we actually use some back-end support, which is a little more manual than I would like to do at the time or at the moment. So we've got a couple VAs, we've got Marblebox, we've got a couple different, I would say bridges right now is probably the best word to use for that, to make sure.
When he said MeisterTask, all I could think of was Meister Burger from the Santa Claus is Coming to Town Christmas special.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we got to listen. We could go down a million rabbit holes with you, man.
Yeah.
You got to get the Great West story out.
So we going back to that. I call and I get a hold of them, and I, pretty much a conversation with Great West until you get on their radar pretty much goes like this. They talk to you, they entertain your conversation, then they tell you to get back to them when you've got, 20, 30 million in premium. Is basically how the conversation flow goes. Unless I think they identify you as a major player and as a legit upper tier agency. And so this was years kind of in the making. I'd reached out initially thinking like, okay, if we're going to be the best of the best, who do we have to have? Well, you've got a couple key players in that arena, Great West being one of them. I made the introduction. I introduced myself, and it was a good conversation, but it was a polite, get your weight up type conversation. We don't, you're not what we want, and you're not an actual trucking agent type conversation. So I've spent, the last 3-4 years building processes, building flow, automation, marketing, campaigns, knowledge, expertise surrounding everything. And so there was a time frame where I went to my sales team that were in trucking and transitioning into the trucking team. And I said, okay, we've got 1 month, 2 months. I think we equated it to a 2-month planting period and kind of fishing expedition with a 2-month follow-up for harvesting. And I said, I want to put, I can't remember what the goal was, but I want to say it was like $1 million in premium in this very short duration of time. So we went to bat, we went up there, we started hitting. The campaigns blew up, the marketing took off, everything flowed. We put a tremendous amount of volume on the books in a very, very short duration with a long-term strategy and plan in place with our business planning and everything there. I then took that, went back to them, and I said, look, I need another conversation. Didn't really go anywhere. And I was like, okay. It's kind of discouraging. Then fast forward a little bit of time, and I did some persistent follow-ups and contacts. She happened to be in town, or the rep happened to be in town, and said, hey, I would love to chat with you. Let's get together. Let's meet. Met with her. Kind of the similar type deal. It was like, okay, let's hear what you got going. I went into this. I went into the lead gen. I went into that. I've like, hey, in the last 2 months, I've got like 600 exclusive trucking leads. Here's what we've wrote. Here's what we've done. The whole song and dance. And it was basically like, okay, that's great. let's touch base down the road. It's awesome to hear you're doing well. I was like, okay. Fast forward some more time. I follow
These
back.
guys sound annoying.
No, they're great. I mean, they're the best of the best. So put it this way, they control 30+% of the marketplace with a handful of agents in each zone.
Right.
I mean,
well, this is no different than what we went through with auto owners.
Yeah. I'm just kidding.
Similar type deal. And they're amazing. I mean, I've come to love them, and they actually line up with our core values. They line up with kind of how we operate, with what we believe in, and putting the customer as far as level of service here and all that stuff. So it was a good fit naturally in my mind. I just now needed them to know, hey, we're here. Here's what we're doing. So I finally reached back out, and she says, okay, this sounds great. I'm glad you followed up. I need to run it by, the AVP, the commercial underwriting, like all the higher ups, right? And we need to set up a time to meet up and to set up a meeting. And I said, where are they all at? They're all down here in our regional office. We're located here. I said, okay, are they all there next week? Yeah. Okay, what day? This day. I said, okay, I've got a flight booked. I'll be there this day. Flew down, met with them, went over everything, went over all the stuff, brought case studies. They interviewed the team in depth. They looked at the agency financials in depth. Like, we went through the whole thing, and we still weren't solidified. And it was like, holy shit, I don't even put a suit on except to get married and funerals, put a suit on the whole 9 yards to go there. And it kind of came back and was like, all right, fast forward some time. Then they came back up and actually met with our team on an individual basis, interviewed the team. They came in with the underwriting. They basically wanted to make sure that we were a legit contender. We were trucking. We knew what we were doing, and we were going to put, volume on the books. And so we ended up securing the contract from there. And so it was a lot of building, a lot of game plan, a lot of intentional focus, a lot of separation from other agencies that dabbled. It was a lot of things that came into play to basically get us to that point.
Yeah, it's crazy, man, what you have to do. And I think that's what separates like the people that are going to be ultimately successful and those that are just going to sell insurance. I had the same thing happen in my prior agency with Travelers. They were giving us the runaround about why they couldn't appoint us, and they needed to have a meeting in the regional office, which just so happened to be in Atlanta. And I said, well, when do you want to meet? Well, let me see. I said, no, you don't understand. I'm going to book a flight. You tell me when you want to meet. Well, we typically meet on Fridays. It was on a Wednesday. I was like, okay, you talking about this Friday? Well, I said, no. Do you want me to fly up this Friday? We did. Yep. We ended up flying up.
It's the same as any. If you want to work with someone, I mean, you got to put in your time, right? Your legwork, your research. You've got to come with a plan. And we don't get terminated from partnerships. We've terminated some with carrier partners and things like that. But I don't want to waste their time. If they're not a fit, I don't want them on our lineup.
No, but I think there's a lot of agencies out there, and I could be wrong, but just in my experience and what I hear from our marketing reps and everything, that you get a lot of people that say, oh, I want a contract. I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do this. And then at the end of the day, they wanted the contract because there was a single account they were working on, and they needed to have the appointment to get an agent a record letter. That's not a profitable partnership for either one of them.
100%. And then you see, well, we're all part of the same groups. So, I mean, you see the people that are experts. So I figured this out early on because I actually years ago legit wanted some answers to a couple of questions I had, put it out there to these groups that we're involved with, laid it out in kind of a higher level, deeper dive knowledge in trucking. Crickets. I was like, huh. I met a few cool people through that, though. They messaged me and we had great conversation. In fact, one of them's in your program down out of Arizona, Matt, and he's a great, solid dude.
Matt's a good dude.
Yeah, I like, Matt's awesome. But anyways, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. I thought we had a bunch of trucking experts and stuff like that. Then follow it up, go a couple of weeks. I put out a couple of posts of, hey, I've got leads in these regions I can't service. I'm getting leads from all these states that I'm not licensed. All of a sudden, now you got
hundreds of people. Yeah,
you've got 100 experts in trucking, and I'm like, what is going on? It was kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I got into a scrape this weekend in one of the groups with a dude that was like, somebody asked the question, "Do you believe in minimum revenue accounts for your agency?" Yes, I do. Right. And then they wanted to tell me why I was wrong. And I mean, you're sitting here and you're reading all of this stuff. And I mean, look, I try not to lose my cool in stuff like that because it doesn't help me. I'm not winning anything by making somebody else look stupid. I just make myself look like a jerk. I get that. So I don't ever get out of hand when I'm going back and forth with people. But like these people were genuinely telling me that I was limiting my ability to grow my agency by only focusing on accounts that are $5,000 in revenue and higher. And there's people in there that are saying, I'm a scratch agency. I'll take a policy for $50. Really? $50? How are you making money on that? Yeah. You know, and by the way, you know, it's not the revenue that's coming in. It's what's left over that you use to pay yourself and pay the bills. If you're losing money on these accounts and you bring them in, writing more of them doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. You know, you're never going to get your agency up and running that way. And look, I get it, man. It's tough. You can't, if you're a new agency, you can't sit there and say, I'm only going to go after accounts that are $5,000 or more. I would be talking out of both sides of my mouth if I said I didn't write whatever I could possibly find within reason when I launched my agency. But now that I'm at the point that I'm at, I don't want to write this small stuff. I understand that it takes more service than the middle market does. Mm-hmm. And I end up not having the premium to support the level of effort we have to put into taking care of the account. So
when you spend an excessive amount of time researching the new client that you want to write and the market and where you got to go. And I kind of equated that too for the producers that listen to this kind of early on in the career. And I went through the same steps, right? And we kind of all go through the same route, unless you had some rock stars on here that like went to school for insurance. Which I think is weird, but awesome at the same time. But,
yeah, no, I agree with you, man. I think that, whatever.
It's like, I don't know where they came from. They were like in a hatchery and born and like bred to do it, which is great. I'm jealous. But anyways, you know, early on, you're hunting and gathering, right? You're kind of eating because you're starving. You have to eat anything that comes by and you shoot at anything that comes by. And then as you gain skill set, a little bit of money for better tools and equipment, you got a team. You can now selectively say, okay, I'm going to shoot at this, or I want to go after this client, or you only hit what you go after. So that whole argument, all it is a difference of opinion and a point of view, which is great. Run your agency how you do. We'll run it how we do. And I love having agents and going up against agents in that position, because had I had this appointment early on in my career without what I know now, it would have flopped, man. It wouldn't even have been a good fit. We would have failed miserably. And if I go up against myself back then, now, dude, it's game over. They're not even going to compete. And it's fine. They might get through the initial phase to quote. Great. You like practice quoting. Awesome. Good for you. We don't do it. So
yeah, one of my favorites is when somebody asks about Xywave, right? And so obviously we're huge evangelists to Xywave.
Yeah.
You know, we don't get paid to say that. We make a lot of money because we use it. But we don't, you know, they don't sponsor podcasts or any of my comments in Facebook groups or whatever else. We actually are getting ready to have their person that's responsible for new product development. We're interviewing him tomorrow or Wednesday on the podcast. So that should be an interesting conversation. But like somebody asked about it last week and I gave my 2 cents. And then immediately underneath it, a guy writes, "It's an obsolete product. Don't waste your money." And I'm like,
based on what?
I wrote back and said, it's a product that has allowed me to take a lot of accounts from agents who find it to be obsolete. You know, that's it, because it's like anything else. If there's anything that I would give people advice about, which there's a lot of things that I give people advice about, but you know, the thing is, don't fall victim to all of the shiny objects that are out there. You don't have to have them. Even in Killing Commercial, you know, when I'm talking to people in there about their agencies and what they're going to do to migrate, they're so worried that they have to lead with workers' comp, or they have to have Xywave, they have to have HubSpot. Dude, when I first started in this industry, I made a boatload of money in my first year and a half with an Excel spreadsheet. That's it. You know, all of my stuff was on an Excel spreadsheet. Now, if my laptop would have crashed and I lost that spreadsheet, I was toast. But you don't have to have all that stuff. And I think that so many times we get in, social media has been a detractor from the right way to do things, because it makes people feel like they're in competition with other agencies for things that they don't even need.
I almost wonder, we were talking about it the other day, I think with I think with Justin, about how the industry has been so slow to adopt technology. I wonder if the shiny object syndrome is sort of related to that, where people are like, okay, I've got to get technology in here to help me run like some of these other, and they just go after all these different people. I wonder if that's got something to do with it.
I don't know, man. They get they buy all this crap and then they never use half of it, and then they trash it in the marketplace. It's
I mean, if you think Xywave is obsolete, you're not using it correct.
Well, because they don't invest the back end time. They think they're going to buy it, adapt it, and it works.
Right.
There's no magic wand. There is no magic wand. It's like HubSpot. Yeah. People ask me about it all the time. We use HubSpot. I bet you. I've spent well over $100,000 in HubSpot in the last year and a half. We're not even using 20% of what it's capable of doing. And that's how much it costs. With Killing Commercial and the Extra 2 Minutes website, I use Entreport for $75 a month. I don't need HubSpot for that stuff. I need a CRM to be able to keep track of the people that are visiting the site for all the reasons you would have one. But I don't need to have the Mac Daddy CRM for that. People don't realize that when you buy some of this technology like HubSpot too, you're buying a chassis. It's stripped out. You're not buying something that you can immediately take and run with. You have to build it and make it what you want it to be. And that's not cheap to do. You don't do that when you're a scratch agency. You have Zoho for $50 or $60 a month like I did, and you know this is what I want down the road, and you work to make sure you get to the point where you can do that one day. But you don't do that right out of the box.
You don't need to. And I think a lot of people, and like you said, I kind of told a little bit of your story early on. I think it hardened me coming in the way I did and having to do what I did and grind it out on the phones the way I did and make it happen on my own, dude. Legit, no help. Literally, our training in California was, hey, welcome to the team. Here's a phone book. Here's an application. Here's a list of carriers. Good luck. And they're half-work comp carriers. It was like, okay, this is not a successful setup. So, and then I think a couple things too. A lot of agents get satisfied. They get full. I mean, I remain hungry. I'm always looking at a way to improve, to sharpen the tools, the skill set, things that are not shiny object things, but how can I legit be better, add more value to our clients and add more value to my team and kind of dominate the marketplace in that sense. And so I'm constantly learning. I mean, I didn't go to college. I did for a short duration, but I didn't go to university. I didn't do all that. But that does not mean I didn't get education or constantly learning or constantly trying to evolve my skill set. And I'm hungry. Always have been, always will be. There's no satisfaction in that. I always think my bank account will be zero in my mind. I don't care how much money's in there because then you pay taxes. You learn about that early on. Think of that. Taxes as a 21-year-old, the first time 1099, and you're like, I got to pay taxes? Like it's not out of my paycheck? Dude, that was a hard lesson in and of itself.
I failed accounting like we talked about. So
yeah, you and me both. I have to have somebody handle all that. Well, listen, we're up on time. I want to thank you for coming on and talking with us today, man. I always enjoy chatting with you and hearing what you have to say. If anybody wants to reach out to you, tell them where to find you. And I'm sure they will. Hold on, time out. I'm sure all of you out there want to reach out to Cameron. Let me sell that a little bit better than what I did. Good God, that was horrible. Yeah, maybe they'll call you, maybe they won't. By the way, if you're holding a sign on the side of the road and you want some advice on some good moves, Cameron can be reached at.
Yeah, we could absolutely. I think through the Facebook groups, Messenger is great. Shoot me a friend request. Cameron Pechia, Pechia. I'll get through there. My email is Cameron@valleytruckinginsurance.com. Feel free to reach out there. LinkedIn. valleytruckinginsurance.com is our website. We're on Facebook as well. I mean, you can find us. So we're not hard. You probably don't see a ton of what we do because I literally only market to truckers.
Yeah, you know what? I don't, man, but that means you're successful at what you're doing because you're only getting your audience.
Yep.
Good deal. Well, listen, man, thanks a lot for coming on. I hope you have a good 4th of July, and we look forward to talking again soon.
Right on,
thanks,
guys.
man.
Thank you.
Take care, brother. See ya.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.